The coffee was still brewing when I noticed the bandage on Arielle's shoulder blade. She stood at the kitchen counter in her silk robe, scrolling through her phone with that particular intensity she reserved for work emergencies and online shopping sprees. The gauze peeked out from beneath the fabric like a white flag of surrender. "New tattoo?" I asked, pouring myself a cup from the half-full pot. She startled, nearly dropping her phone. "Oh, that? Yeah, just something small. Mia talked me into it yesterday." Mia, her architect friend with the perpetual drama and the husband who collected vintage motorcycles. I'd met the guy exactly once at a charity gala 3 months ago. Dorian Vexler, all smiles and firm handshakes and stories about his wife Kena's hatred of tattoos. "Thought you were terrified of needles," I said, settling into my usual chair at the breakfast table. Arielle's laugh came too quickly. "I was, but Dorian said it wasn't that bad, and Mia practically dragged me to this place downtown. You know how persuasive she can be." Dorian, not Mia. The slip hung in the air between us like smoke from a forgotten cigarette. "What did you get?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. She pulled the robe tighter around herself. "Just a small design. Nothing dramatic. I'll show you when it heals." The coffee tasted bitter, though I'd used the same beans as always. Arielle gathered her things for work with unusual efficiency, kissing my cheek before heading toward the garage. Her phone buzzed against the granite countertop. She'd left it behind in her rush. The message preview showed a heart emoji and the initial D. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my truck outside Precision Ink, the tattoo parlor downtown. The place looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a trendy tattoo shop. Exposed brick, neon signs, and a receptionist with enough metal in her face to set off airport security. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the counter. "My wife got work done here yesterday. Arielle Marinor? I'm supposed to pick up some aftercare instructions." The girl with the nose rings looked confused. "Yesterday? Let me check the book." She flipped through a leather-bound appointment ledger. "Arielle. Yeah, here she is. But she came in with her boyfriend, not her husband. They got matching pieces." The floor didn't actually shift beneath my feet, but it felt like it should have. "Matching pieces?" "Yeah, really sweet. Infinity symbols with intertwined initials. His and hers, you know? Same placement, same size. The guy paid for both." I thanked her and walked back to my truck on legs that felt disconnected from my brain. Matching tattoos. With Dorian Vexler, whose wife had specifically mentioned his hatred of tattoos at that charity gala. Whose wife had laughed about how he wouldn't even let her get her ears pierced a second time. The drive home took forever and no time at all. I sat in my driveway, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to process what I'd learned. Arielle and Dorian, matching tattoos, his and hers infinity symbols with intertwined initials. My phone buzzed with a text from Arielle. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." I forwarded the message to a number I'd looked up online, Kena Vexler's cell phone, listed in the charity gala program from 3 months ago. I added a single line. "Thought you should know your husband got a tattoo yesterday, matching one with my wife." Then I went inside to wait. The house felt different somehow, like walking through a museum exhibit of my own life. Everything was exactly where it should be, but nothing felt real anymore. I opened a beer and sat in my recliner, staring at the framed wedding photos on the mantelpiece. Had Arielle been planning this even then? Had she looked at me on our wedding day and already been thinking about someone else? My phone rang at 8:30. Unknown number. "This is Kena Vexler," the voice said without preamble. "We need to talk." Kena Vexler looked exactly like someone who'd married into money and learned to wear it well. Designer jeans, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of understated jewelry that cost more than my truck. We met at a coffee shop on the opposite side of town, far from the suburban bubble where our respective spouses were probably comparing tattoo healing progress. "Show me what you know," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I placed printouts on the table between us. Phone records showing the frequency of calls between Arielle and Dorian. Credit card statements with charges at the same restaurants on the same days. The appointment book page from Precision Ink with their names written in matching purple ink. Kena studied each page with the methodical attention of someone reviewing architectural blueprints. "How long?" she asked finally. "Based on the phone records? About 4 months. Maybe longer." She nodded, sliding the papers back across the table. "Dorian's been working late a lot. New project," he said. Very hush-hush. Her laugh held no humor. "I suppose it was hush-hush. What do you want to do about it?" Kena's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I want to watch them burn." Over the next 2 weeks, we developed what I came to think of as the Kena plan. Phase 1 involved documentation. She installed tracking software on Dorian's laptop while he showered. I set up a camera in my own bedroom, hidden inside an old alarm clock, to catch Arielle's late-night phone calls. The footage was worse than I'd imagined. Arielle would wait until she thought I was asleep, then slip into the bathroom to text. The camera's audio picked up whispered conversations about weekend getaways and apartment hunting, about how much easier everything would be once the divorce paperwork was filed. Divorce paperwork I knew nothing about. Phase 2 involved social media archaeology. Kena proved surprisingly adept at digital detective work, uncovering a trail of breadcrumbs that painted a clear picture. Arielle and Dorian had been liking each other's posts with suspicious consistency. They'd checked into the same locations at the same times, carefully avoiding being photographed together. They'd even created a shared Pinterest board for future home ideas. "Look at this," Kena said during one of our coffee meetings, showing me her phone screen. "They've been planning a life together for months. Look at these pins, furniture, paint colors, even baby nursery themes." The baby nursery pins hit like a physical blow. Arielle and I had been trying to start a family for 2 years. Apparently, she'd decided to start one without me. Phase 3 was where things got creative. Kena had connections throughout the city's social scene, charity boards, country clubs, professional organizations. She began dropping carefully crafted hints about suspicious behavior she'd observed. Nothing actionable, nothing that could be traced back to her directly. Just enough to plant seeds of doubt in the right minds. Meanwhile, I focused on financial reconnaissance. Joint accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, everything Arielle and I had built together over 5 years of marriage. I couldn't legally freeze her access, but I could certainly monitor every transaction. And what I saw made my stomach turn. She'd been siphoning money into a separate account for months, small amounts, carefully timed to coincide with legitimate expenses. 100 here for groceries that never materialized in our kitchen. 200 there for work lunches that happened on weekends. It added up to nearly $15,000, our entire vacation fund, plus the money we'd been saving for a down payment on a bigger house. The house we'd planned to fill with children. I screenshot every transaction, every transfer, every withdrawal. Then I did something that probably crossed a legal line, but felt absolutely necessary. I changed the passwords on all our joint accounts and set up alerts for any attempted access. Arielle noticed within hours. "The bank website isn't working," she said, standing in the kitchen doorway with her laptop balanced on one arm. "I can't log into our checking account." "Weird," I said, not looking up from my own computer. "Works fine for me." She tried again, her frustration mounting with each failed login attempt. "This is ridiculous. I need to transfer money for the Henderson project materials." "I can do it for you. How much do you need?" The pause lasted just long enough to be significant. "Never mind. I'll call the bank tomorrow." But she didn't call the bank. Instead, she called Dorian. I know because Kena told me she'd started monitoring his phone calls too, using an app that recorded everything to a cloud server. The conversation was illuminating. "He's on to us," Arielle had said. "Changed all the account passwords." "How much does he know?" Dorian's voice, tinny through the phone speaker, but unmistakably panicked. "I don't know, but we need to accelerate the timeline. I can't keep pretending much longer." "What about the apartment deposit?" "I'll figure something out. Maybe take a cash advance on my personal card." "Arielle, if he's suspicious enough to lock you out of the accounts, then we move faster. I'll file the papers this week." The recording ended there, but it was enough. Kena and I met that same evening to plan Phase 4. The law offices of Brennan, Shaw, and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. I'd never been inside before, but I recognized the name from Arielle's credit card statements. She'd paid them a $2,000 retainer 6 weeks ago, listed as consultation fees in her expense tracking app. "Mr. Marinor," the receptionist said when I gave my name, "you're not on Mr. Shaw's calendar for today." "I'm not here to see Mr. Shaw. I'm here to discuss my wife's account. Arielle Marinor. I believe she's retained your firm for divorce proceedings." The receptionist's professional smile flickered. "I'll need to check with—" "No need," I said, placing a folder on her desk. "I'm here to provide additional documentation for her case. Financial records, asset valuations, that sort of thing. I want to make sure she has everything she needs." It was a calculated gamble, but it paid off. The receptionist, clearly confused by a spouse who seemed eager to help with his own divorce, accepted the folder and promised to pass it along to Mr. Shaw. The folder contained copies of all the financial records I'd gathered, plus a few extras Kena had helped me compile. Bank statements showing the secret account, credit card records documenting expensive dinners and hotel stays, phone records proving the extended timeline of the affair. And, as a special touch, printouts from the Pinterest board where Arielle and Dorian had been planning their future together. I also included a brief note explaining that I was fully aware of my wife's intentions and would be retaining my own counsel. The note was polite, professional, and absolutely devastating in its implications. If Arielle thought she was going to ambush me with divorce papers, she was about to learn otherwise. The real masterstroke came 3 days later, when Kena executed her part of the plan. She hosted a dinner party, nothing elaborate, just 8 couples from their social circle, including several people from the charity gala where I'd first met her. Arielle and I were invited, as were Dorian and Kena, naturally. The other guests were carefully chosen, all people who knew both couples, all people who enjoyed a good piece of gossip. The evening started normally enough. Cocktails in the living room, dinner around Kena's massive dining table, conversation about work and travel and the usual suburban concerns. Arielle seemed relaxed for the first time in weeks, laughing at Dorian's stories and complimenting Kena on the meal. Then came dessert and Kena's moment of theatrical brilliance. "Oh, Arielle," she said, as if the thought had just occurred to her. "I meant to ask about your new tattoo. Dorian mentioned you two went together to get matching ones. How sweet is that?" The silence that followed was exquisite. Arielle's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Dorian's face went pale. The other guests looked confused but intrigued. Matching tattoos between married friends was unusual enough to warrant attention. "Matching tattoos?" asked Jennifer Walsh, the wife of a local banker. "How romantic. I mean, how fun. What did you get?" Arielle recovered first, her professional smile snapping into place. "Oh, just small infinity symbols. Friendship tattoos, you know. Very trendy." "Infinity symbols," Kena repeated thoughtfully. "With your initials intertwined, right? That's what the tattoo artist told me when I called to ask about getting one myself." Another silence, deeper this time. Dorian was staring at his dessert plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. Arielle's smile was starting to look strained. "You called the tattoo parlor?" Arielle asked. "Of course. I wanted to see their work before making an appointment. The artist was very complimentary about your pieces. Said they were some of the most romantic couples tattoos he'd ever done." The word couples hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I watched the faces around the table as the implications sank in. Jennifer Walsh's eyes widened. Tom Peterson nearly choked on his wine. Even the normally oblivious Mike Chen looked confused. "Couples tattoos?" Jennifer asked, looking between Arielle and Dorian with obvious confusion. "But you're not… I mean, you're both married to…" She gestured helplessly at Kena and me. Arielle stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. The tattoo artist was confused. We got friendship tattoos. Nothing romantic about it." "Of course," Kena said smoothly. "My mistake. Though I have to say, the photos he showed me were quite intimate. The placement, the design, the way you were holding hands during the process." Arielle's composure finally cracked. "Photos?" "Oh, yes. He keeps a portfolio of his work. Very artistic shots. I'm sure he'd be happy to show them to anyone who's interested." That was the end of the dinner party. Arielle mumbled something about feeling sick and practically dragged me toward the door. Dorian followed, making his own excuses. The other guests remained behind, and I could hear the buzz of excited conversation starting before we even reached the foyer. In the car, Arielle was silent for the first 5 minutes. Then she exploded. "What the hell was that about?" What about? "Don't play stupid, Zane. Kena knew about the tattoos. She had photos." "How did she know about photos?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Maybe you should ask yourself why she was suspicious enough to investigate in the first place." "This is insane. We got friendship tattoos, that's all." "Friendship tattoos with intertwined initials, placed in the exact same spot on your bodies, paid for by your friend's husband, while holding hands." She stared at me, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." We drove the rest of the way home in silence. But I knew the real conversation was just beginning. The confrontation came at 2 in the morning. I was lying in bed pretending to sleep when Arielle's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She grabbed it and headed for the bathroom, but this time I was ready. The recording app I'd installed on my own phone picked up her half of the conversation clearly. "He knows," she whispered. "I don't know how much, but he knows." A pause. "No, I can't do that. If I leave now, it looks like an admission of guilt." Another pause, longer this time. "Dorian, listen to me. We stick to the story. Friendship tattoos. Nothing more. Kena was just stirring up trouble because she's jealous." She was quiet for several minutes, presumably listening. "Fine. Yes, I'll meet you tomorrow. But we need to be more careful. No more public places, no more shared rides, no more anything until this blows over." When she came back to bed, I was ready. "Friendship tattoos," I said into the darkness. She froze. "What?" "That's what you're calling them. Friendship tattoos." "Zane, I don't want to…" "Show me." "What?" I sat up and turned on the bedside lamp. "Show me the tattoo. If it's just a friendship tattoo, show me." She pulled the covers up to her chin. "It's still healing." "It's been 2 weeks." "The bandage…" "There's no bandage, Arielle. There hasn't been a bandage for over a week." We stared at each other across the suddenly vast expanse of our king-size bed. In the harsh light of the bedside lamp, she looked older somehow, worn down by the weight of maintaining her lies. "Show me the tattoo," I repeated. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned and pulled down the shoulder of her nightgown. The tattoo was small, but unmistakably intimate, an infinity symbol with the letters A and D intertwined at the center, surrounded by delicate flourishes that looked more like wedding decoration than friendship art. "Friendship tattoo," I said. "Yes." "With Dorian's initial." "It's not what you think. What I think is that you've been planning to leave me for months. What I think is that you've been stealing money from our joint accounts to fund your new life with him. What I think is that you've already filed divorce papers without telling me." Her face went white. How did you? I know about the apartment you've been looking at. I know about the Pinterest board. I know about the $15,000 you've transferred to your personal account. I know about the lawyer. She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, the tears of someone whose carefully laid plans had been discovered. You don't understand, she said. This marriage. We've been drifting apart for years. You know we have. So you decided to drift toward my friend's husband instead of talking to me about it. Dorian understands me. He supports my career, my ambitions. He doesn't make me feel guilty for working late or wanting more out of life. And the money? Does he understand why you needed to steal $15,000 from your husband? I didn't steal anything. That money was mine too. Money we were saving for a house, for our future children. Children you're never ready to have, a house you never want to look at, a future you never want to plan for. She was getting angry now, which was exactly what I wanted. Angry people said things they didn't mean to say. So you planned a future with someone else instead? Yes, she said, and there it was. The admission I'd been waiting for. Yes, I did, because at least Dorian wants the same things I want. Like what? Like a real partnership, like someone who doesn't just coast through life waiting for things to happen, like someone who takes charge and makes decisions and doesn't spend every weekend at a boxing gym pretending he's still in college. The boxing gym comment stung more than I expected. It was my one escape, the one place where I could clear my head and work out my frustrations. The fact that she saw it as a character flaw rather than a healthy outlet told me everything I needed to know about how she really viewed our marriage. So when do you file the papers? I asked. I already did. When? Last week. You'll be served on Monday. I nodded, unsurprised but somehow still hurt by the casual way she delivered the information. And then what? You move in with Dorian? Become stepmother to his kids? Dorian doesn't have kids. Yet. But you've been pinning nursery ideas. Her face flushed. You went through my Pinterest account? I went through everything, Arielle. Bank records, phone records, social media, email accounts, credit card statements. I know about every restaurant you've eaten at together, every hotel you've stayed in, every lie you've told me over the past 4 months. She stared at me with something approaching respect. I underestimated you. Yes, you did. So what happens now? I smiled, and I could see from her expression that it wasn't a pleasant smile. Now we see how much Dorian really loves you when his wife finds out about all of this. Kena already knows. She was the one who brought it up at dinner. Kena suspects, but she doesn't know about the money or the apartment or the divorce papers, or the fact that you've been planning to leave your husband for her husband since before Christmas. Arielle's eyes widened as the implications sank in. You're going to tell her everything. I'm not going to tell her anything. You are. What? You're going to call Kena tomorrow morning and confess everything. The whole timeline, all the lies, all the planning. You're going to apologize for betraying her friendship and ask for her forgiveness. I'm not doing that. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I will. And when I tell the story, I won't be nearly as sympathetic to your perspective as you would be. She shook her head. You can't make me do that. I can't make you do anything. But I can make your life very uncomfortable if you don't. Starting with a phone call to your boss about the Henderson Project funds you've been skimming. I haven't been skimming anything. Really? Because according to your expense reports, you've billed the firm for materials and labor that were never delivered. I have the receipts, Arielle. Or rather, I have the lack of receipts. She stared at me, and I could see her mind racing, trying to remember what she'd claimed and what she could prove. You've been busy, she said finally. I've been thorough. Fine. I'll call Kena. Good. And Arielle? What? When you make that call, remember that she's recording everything these days, so choose your words carefully. The phone call happened at 10:30 the next morning. I know because Kena called me immediately afterward to play the recording. Arielle had been smart about it. I had to give her credit. She'd crafted a story that painted her as conflicted and guilty, a woman who'd made mistakes but was trying to do the right thing. She admitted to the affair, but downplayed its significance. She acknowledged the tattoos but described them as a moment of poor judgment rather than a symbol of commitment. She even apologized, though the apology sounded rehearsed. What she didn't mention was the money, the apartment, the divorce papers, or the timeline. She made it sound like a recent development, a brief lapse in judgment that she was already regretting. Kena listened to the whole thing without comment, then thanked Arielle for her honesty and hung up. "She thinks I'm stupid," Kena told me when she called. "She thinks I don't know about the rest of it." "Do you want to know about the rest of it?" "I want to know everything." So I told her. The financial records, the apartment hunting, the Pinterest board, the divorce timeline. I sent her copies of every document I'd gathered, every screenshot I'd taken, every piece of evidence I'd compiled. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "She's been planning this since before Christmas," Kena said finally. "Yes." "And Dorian's been lying to me for months?" "Yes." "They think they're going to ride off into the sunset together." "That seems to be the plan." Another silence, then a sound that might have been laughter or might have been something else entirely. "I have an idea," Kena said, "but I'm going to need your help." The plan she outlined was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. It would require perfect timing, careful coordination, and a willingness to go nuclear on both our marriages simultaneously. It would also require me to do something I'd never done before: stand up in front of a crowd and tell the truth about my personal life. "Are you sure about this?" I asked when she finished explaining. "I'm sure. The question is, are you?" I thought about Arielle's dismissive comments about the boxing gym, about her casual announcement that she'd already filed divorce papers, about the $15,000 she'd stolen to fund her new life. I thought about the months of lies, the careful manipulation, the complete disrespect for our marriage vows. I'm sure. The Westfield Country Club's annual charity auction was scheduled for the following Saturday evening. It was the social event of the season, attended by everyone who was anyone in our suburban community. Arielle had bought our tickets months ago, back when she was still pretending to be a devoted wife. Dorian and Kena would be there too, along with most of the people who'd witnessed the awkward dinner party conversation about matching tattoos. Kena's plan required her to play the role of unsuspecting wife right up until the critical moment. She spent the week leading up to the auction acting completely normal, even going so far as to help Arielle pick out a dress for the event. She posted cheerful social media updates about looking forward to the evening, tagged Arielle in photos of their shopping trip, and generally gave every impression of a woman who had no idea her husband was cheating. Meanwhile, I spent the week preparing my presentation. The auction format included a segment where community members could stand up and make brief announcements about local causes or upcoming events. It was usually boring stuff: fundraising drives, volunteer opportunities, civic meetings. Kena had arranged for me to be added to the speaker list, ostensibly to promote a youth boxing program at the local community center. What I actually planned to promote was significantly more interesting. Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. The country club's main ballroom was decorated with white flowers and gold accents, round tables set for 8 surrounding a small stage and podium. Arielle looked stunning in a black cocktail dress that showed off her tattoo placement perfectly. She seemed relaxed, almost giddy, probably anticipating that this would be one of the last social events she'd have to attend as my wife. Dorian and Kena were seated at a table near the front, along with several other couples from their social circle. Dorian kept catching Arielle's eye across the room, small smiles and meaningful glances that he probably thought were subtle. Kena played her part perfectly, chatting with the other wives and complimenting Arielle on her dress. The auction portion of the evening went smoothly. Local businesses had donated everything from restaurant gift certificates to vacation packages, and the bidding was spirited. I even bid on a few items myself, maintaining the fiction that I was just another happily married suburbanite supporting a good cause. Then came the community announcement segment. I was the third speaker, following a woman promoting a local food bank and a man recruiting volunteers for a river cleanup project. When my name was called, I walked to the podium with a folder in my hand and a smile on my face. "Good evening," I said, adjusting the microphone. "My name is Zane Marinor, and I'm here tonight to talk about truth in relationships." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the youth boxing program announcement they'd been expecting. "How many of you have been married for more than 5 years?" I asked. About half the hands in the room went up. "How many of you believe that honesty is the foundation of a strong marriage?" More hands, including Arielle's. She was smiling, probably thinking I was about to give some generic speech about communication and trust. "I used to believe that too," I continued. "I thought my wife and I had built our relationship on mutual respect and honest communication. I thought we shared the same values, the same goals, the same commitment to our marriage vows." Arielle's smile was starting to look strained. She was probably wondering where this was going and why I hadn't mentioned giving a speech. "But recently, I discovered that my wife has been living a double life. For the past 4 months, she's been having an affair with a married friend of ours. They've been planning a future together, complete with matching tattoos, a shared apartment, and a joint Pinterest board for decorating their new home." The murmur became a buzz. People were starting to look around the room, trying to figure out who I was talking about. Arielle had gone pale, her hand frozen halfway to her water glass. "They've been stealing money from their respective spouses to fund this new life together. They've been lying to friends and family about their relationship. And they've been planning to abandon their marriage vows without having the courage to be honest about their intentions." I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. I have documentation of everything: bank records, phone records, text messages, photos, appointment books, legal filings. I have evidence of financial fraud, adultery, and conspiracy to commit fraud, and I have names. The room was completely silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. "My wife, Arielle Marinor, has been having an affair with Dorian Vexler. They got matching tattoos 3 weeks ago. They've been apartment hunting together for 2 months. They've stolen nearly $20,000 from their spouses to fund their new life together. And they filed preliminary divorce paperwork without informing either of their spouses." I looked directly at Arielle, who was staring at me with a mixture of horror and rage. Then I looked at Dorian, who appeared to be trying to melt into his chair. "Arielle, Dorian, would you like to come up here and explain yourselves to everyone? Or would you prefer to let your actions speak for themselves?" Neither of them moved. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Finally, Kena stood up. "I'd like to say something," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. I stepped aside, and she walked to the podium with the same confident stride she'd used at our coffee shop meetings. "My husband has been lying to me for months," she said simply. "He told me he was working late, but he was actually planning a new life with another man's wife. He told me he hated tattoos, but he got matching ones with his lover. He told me he loved me, but he was stealing from our joint accounts to pay for dates with someone else." She paused, looking directly at Dorian. "I want everyone here to know that I am filing for divorce on Monday morning. I am also filing a police report for financial fraud, and I am requesting that the local newspaper publish a full account of this situation, including all the documentation that Zane has so carefully compiled." Another pause, this one longer. "Dorian, you are not welcome in our home tonight, or any night. Your belongings will be on the front lawn by tomorrow morning." She walked back to her table, gathered her purse, and headed for the exit. The crowd parted before her like she was royalty. I looked out at the sea of shocked faces then back at Arielle and Dorian. "I guess that concludes my presentation," I said. "Thank you for your attention." I walked off the stage and headed for the exit, leaving behind the chaos of whispered conversations, shocked gasps, and the sound of chairs scraping as people turned to get a better look at the evening's unwilling stars. In the parking lot, Kena was waiting by my truck. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered the question. How did I feel? Relieved, certainly. Vindicated, absolutely. Sad about the end of my marriage, but not sorry about the way it had ended. "Free," I said finally. She nodded. "Me too." We stood there for a moment, two people who had just blown up their lives in the most public way possible, and I realized I felt better than I had in months. Behind us, the country club buzzed with activity as the social event of the season became the scandal of the decade. Arielle and Dorian would have to face the consequences of their choices, both legal and social. Their carefully planned future together would now begin with the wreckage of their reputations and the weight of their betrayals. But that was their problem now, not mine. I got in my truck and drove home, leaving the chaos behind me. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork and the practical details of disentangling a marriage, but tonight I was free from the lies, free from the pretense, and free from the weight of carrying someone else's secrets. The tattoos would fade eventually, but the truth would last forever.